Well, I'd like to welcome everybody to the new Civic organization. Usually we have our meetings once a month, and we were asked to see if we hold a forum for the candidates for GDPUD today, and we would love to do that so you guys can ask any questions you have for the incumbents and anybody that's running against them. So I'd like to introduce Bonnie Neely. And then we have Krizl.
Everybody.
Pat Snelling. And Maria Capraun. And the way we want to start this off, I'm going to give them all 2 minutes each to have an opening statement. Then we'll start questions. Okay? So, would you like to start, Norm?
Yeah, that's fine. I didn't really prepare an opening statement, but my name is Krizl. I've been on the board since, for about 8 years, a little over 8 years. And I've participated in a tremendous amount of activity with GDPUD. Mike's here. Mike served on the board for a long time. We've worked on a lot of different things. The GDPUD, I think, is an excellent community resource. If you think about water, water is the single most important thing that the community can provide, that anybody can provide to the community. There's nothing more important. People say, well, what about education? Education is tremendously important, but you cannot live without water. Water is the key thing. And GDPUD has done, I think, a fantastic job of providing clean, reliable, and affordable water for the last 60 plus years. And I look forward to being a part of GDPUD in providing that service in the future for this community. Thank you.
Okay. Let me stand up because I'm short and I like to. Okay. My name is Pat Snelling. I'm a native of California, born and raised. I've lived on the Divide for the last 15 years. Every summer we came up here when I was a little girl. My father was a forest ranger and he was homesick for up here. So I've watched the water, the upper American River construction for SMUD develop. I've watched it grow and it change over the years from a recreational with lakes and streams where it just used to be rural mountains and logging tracks. And I grew a passion for water when I walked through the middle of the Union Valley lake bed during the 77, where it was almost bone dry. And I realized how valuable our water is to life itself and to the community. I studied agriculture at Sierra College, where I studied crops and soil, water law, water rights, irrigation systems. And then I worked in the Department of Water Resources, where I had the opportunity to learn about industrial management of water and how our business community uses it and how vital it is to their survival. I also did a research project, did case studies of the famous Owen Valley farmers, and I got to see the impact of having their water rights taken away from them. And it made me realize how very valuable it is and how we have to fight for it. That if we expect the federal government or the state government to protect us, we are fools. They didn't help Owen Valley ranchers. So the reason that I decided to run for office is that I saw the board not really taking seriously how important it is to fight for our water, how important it is to maintain the quality of our water. We had a public health I forgot the term, where it said that you had to maintain the water quality and do a new type of filtration. That was in 2004. Am I over my 2 minutes? Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Maria Capraun, and I've lived on the Divide for about 20 years, but I started coming up here in the 70s with my parents for vacation. And the community here is wonderful, the quality of life is excellent, and our water is pristine. I've been going to GPUD meetings on and off for not quite 20 years, but almost 20 years. I'm not real sure when I started. And I've watched the progression of different situations, and I just feel that the board has taken a turn into a direction I would like to bring in a new direction. And my main goal is to institute policies and procedures into the district. Without the policies and procedures in the district does not function at its optimum level. There's ends up to be wasted resources, and which ends up being your funds. And I just would like to see that every dollar is used appropriately to the maximum capability of the district. And I'm done.
Nice, wow.
All right.
It's hard to be brilliant in 2 minutes. I'm Bonnie Neely. I've been on the board for 4 years, and I'm running for re-election. Since Pat Snelling raised the issue of water rights, I want to assure you that GPUD is doing everything that needs to be done to assure we keep all water rights. Stumpy Meadows was built under a permit. Once the permit and the dam is done, then you apply for licenses to use the water that comes out. In 2010, the board hired 2 consultants to put together the application for licensing rights. And that goes to this area of origin we keep hearing worries about. The district itself has participated in the Mountain Counties Association, which is a new organization of 11 mountain counties that need to protect their water rights, because everyone is fearful that the Delta or the South will end up taking things. So we are participating in these various activities to be sure that our water rights never go, and Norm's one of the representatives to mountain counties. With respect to operations of GPUD, I would like people to focus on the actual buildings, infrastructure, activities, whatever, not some of the rhetoric that has been thrown around. I think we've all gotten a bit hysterical over a number of months, and it's time to stop and to come together as a community. So we're building a new treatment plant. We've put together a mapping system so that the workers can go out and find your water box. They're all in odd places, so that now the system tracks where the pipes are, where the valves are, where everything is. That's a new thing, and that was a very exciting thing to do. We have financial people working on having to upgrade our financial systems, because if we get the USDA loan of $9 million, $5 million to build the new plant, they have immense auditing requirements, so that we would have to put in almost a dual system and have additional auditors. That's it.
This one is for all 4 candidates. Are you a GPUD ratepayer, either ag, residential, or commercial? Ms. Neely?
Yes, I'm a treated water customer.
I'm not.
No, I'm not.
I'm an ag water customer, yes.
Okay. And we have one for Ms. Snelling. Who do you think, who do you think we need to fight for our water rights?
We need to protect our water rights from the Delta plan is asking for another 9,000 cubic feet per second amount of water pulled out of the Delta. And we need to make sure that we keep our state water origin rights, and that we are not giving up our surplus water. We need to make sure that we have enough water to maintain our community. As in Owens Valley, they were not allowed to keep the water to maintain their community. And that seriously worries me.
That we need to be very concerned.
Pat's right that we need to be very concerned about the water up here in the foothills. The Governor Capraun and the state legislature have proposed to take a tremendous amount of water from the foothills to replenish the delta for what they're going to send to Southern California. It's a huge deal. It's a big deal. I sit on the Mountain Counties Water Resource Association board, and Bonnie mentioned it. She mentioned that it was a new organization. It's actually not. It's probably neighborhood of 40, 50 years old. And it's an organization of all the foothill water agencies, and they're united much more strongly now than they have been in a long, long time to deal with what the state is after. It's a very big deal. Our water rights are fairly safe. As long as we protect those water rights, we keep those water rights active, and we show the state that we're using that water for a beneficial use. The Georgetown GDPUD has been doing that annually and providing that information to the state to show that. So it's a big deal. The state of California is in the process of a major water grab from the upper watershed, and that has yet to be seen how that's going to shake out. Now, GDPUD is a very small player in that. The way GDPUD can leverage that, our role in that is to work through the Mountain Counties Water Resource Association, and that's been very effective, and we're a member of that, and they've been very effective in being at the table and making sure that we get our water rights protected. But there's all
right business. We pay the GPUD board agreed to increase its membership fee to Mountain Counties to $6,000 a year because they wanted to hire the director.
4,000.
Okay. Just keep correcting me more about
Sorry.
that.
Sorry.
Okay, so anyway, because they have full-time staff and they're working hard. In addition to the water we keep for ourselves, we often have to release water on down for fish or whatever, so it's more complicated than water just running off the hill. And in all of the projections we send the state, we use the upper figures that are in the general plan for build-out. So we're always telling them we need as much water or more than we would be required if we built out according to the general plan.
Okay, next time you get this all to separately. What policy or procedure do you think needs to be put in place and why?
They need a whole book. The first policy and procedures you would start with is how the board conducts a board meeting. The Brown Act gives you guidelines of certain things to make sure you do, but the board itself needs to expand on that so that you have a more orderly meeting. The people are more informed, the agenda set and the amount of information presented in the agenda, when the agenda is available for the public to view, and I can keep going on. But you need to start with the board itself having its policies, and then for each step of the district, just like we just had a case that was in small claims court, had the way that we clean the ditch system and notify the public been in place, a policy would have told the employees when to notify the public what they were doing, and you would have avoided a lawsuit.
For Mr. Krizl.
okay.
What would you do differently if time were set back to the beginning of your tenure?
I don't know that I do anything differently. We could, 8 years is a long time, and we could talk about a lot of different things. GDPUD has been involved in a lot of issues, some of them very local infrastructure issues, local community issues, rate issues, and then broader issues. When I first got on the board, the GDPUD was involved with a joint powers authority called the El Dorado Water and Power Authority. And the El Dorado Water and Power Authority was set up between El Dorado Irrigation District, Georgetown IPUD, Grizzly Flat, El Dorado County Water Agency, and El Dorado County to negotiate with SMUD, because SMUD was about to re-up its license for the Upper American River Project, which is a big deal. That happens every 50 years. So we were involved in that. So we got involved in that, and we played a strong role in that. We advocated very strongly and spent a lot of time beyond just a monthly meeting. And Mike was there on a lot of it. And we fought hard for GDPUD, and we found out that wasn't going to be the vehicle that worked for GDPUD. We spent a lot of money to try to get excuse me, to try to get additional water rights. We discovered that wasn't going to work. So we pulled out of that. We got the money back, and we actually negotiated a situation where we're going to get, as soon as SMUD gets its license firmed up, which is going to be in the next year or two, we're going to get, Georgetown PUD is going to get $90,000 a year for the duration of their license, which is likely to be 50 years. So I'm very proud of that. I think we did a good job with that. We pulled out of that after, we still get the $90,000 a year, but we pulled out of that effort, and we can talk about, you know, other water rights issues beyond that. But I'm very proud of what GDPUD has done. You know, we have low rates, and we're in good shape. So.
Ms. Neely, would you change anything in your last 4 years?
In hindsight, I'm not sure what I would have done differently. Part of the point of a board by law is that you pull together 5 or whatever number the board is of hopefully differing opinions, but also a willingness to work together to find a way to compromise, to use the best of everyone's opinion to support the community or the organization. I think that can be a very tedious process and not always apparent to the public, that sometimes some of the discussions about philosophy or whatever will enter around a closed item, a closed session item, when the philosophy is kind of peripheral to the case in point or the subject in point. And perhaps we should do a better job of informing the public. Until recently, there weren't very many articles in the paper, for perhaps the first 2 years I was on the board. And since the Mountain Democrat's been sending a reporter up, I think people have more information.
And these are just pretty much the opposite for the candidates. What direction would you lead GDPUD that would be different?
Well, I would like just to, like I had said in my opening, about policies and procedures, because that is a new direction for the board. And that people need to have more information, because presently the information is stifled and you don't really know what like the ALT project, Alderman Lake Trails Water Treatment Plant, the information regarding the plant, where we stand now, how much money we've spent, how much money we're planning to spend, is not anywhere for the general public to see. There's not an update presented each month to the board members or for the public, so you really don't know where they are in the phase, what's going on, what's the next step. A whole outline needs to be presented for the public to see. This is the public's money. The public is left out of GPUD, and I believe that it's the Georgetown Public Utility District. And that is the direction I would like to go, for more public information and transparency.
And Ms. Snelling?
Yes, I seriously have trouble with the board not stepping up to the plate and actually looking and challenging the general manager. Just as an example, the board released this last time, just before the board meeting, but never mentioned it to the board, the pre-qualification for contractors.
What is reading from? What's the title?
It's pre-qualifications for contractors. It's a request that is supposed to be brought to the board according to California public law and California public contract code. And it says bidding statutes are supposed to be protected to protect the public fund, and they are supposed to be reviewed by the board. Bidding procedures must be established by the board before they are brought to the public. This was sent to the public, and then it was pulled back from what I gather, and SOMAS had it, SOMAS, a contractor, added certain components that were reviewed by Bill and Kelly to change it. The board didn't have any input. The engineers on staff had changed the input. This is something we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be talking to the public. The district is supposed to be talking to the board. The board is like a banker. You have to find out what is going on, what you're going to be doing, what you're going to be building, how much it's going to cost. You don't just arbitrarily, don't let the developer go and build his project without ever asking questions. That's what I would change.
This question,
Excuse me, I need to respond. First of all, with respect to finances, every single month, the financial officer gives us 5 pages of budget reports from like the, it's like the cash check register, summaries of amounts paid for various contractors, cash reports, actual to budget, on and on and on. Capital equipment report and how it's playing out according to the budget. So we get that every single month. Whether or not the public chooses to read it, I don't know, but it is on the website. And with respect to the pre-qualification, the general manager sends each of the board members copies of all of this stuff at least 5 days before each board meeting. So we have a chance to review it and go back to him if we have questions before we appear at the board meeting. So we have gotten copies of all of these things. And I know when I was first a director, I wanted to go in and look at files because I didn't know that much. And I just went in one day and spent a day and a half going through the file drawers. There was no problem. There was no, oh, secret drawers, you can't do it, blah, blah, blah. I just stood there and read the files. I mean, I have had no problem with transparency.
I just, you know, Pat, I don't know what you brought forward. I haven't had a chance to review what you've held up and, you know, made these accusations. To suggest that the GDPUD is not following the statutes for bidding and pre-qualifications is, I think is wrong, dead wrong. You've said this at the meetings. It's been countered. It's been very clearly countered by our legal, by our attorney and by the general manager. I think it's, I think you're making up stuff. So.
May I say something? Okay. This is on the web, you're on GDPUD's.
That's fine, but I haven't had a chance to, I don't know what you're putting out.
I agree.
I don't have a chance to read what you're saying.
I agree, Norm, because you weren't at the last meeting. This was mentioned at the last meeting because someone had asked, how is it going on the Auburn Lake Trails water treatment plant? This was not on the agenda. This was not presented to the public. The board did not discuss it, and that is a problem. The board needs to openly discuss this in public, whether or not this is in compliance with what the board wants. They are responsible to the public, like Maria says. It's a public utilities district. It's not a private water agency. So
Let me
I
ask
agree, you have a
Are you suggesting that we haven't followed state law?
Yes,
You are?
yes,
Well, then you need to back that up.
I am.
okay, let's move on.
Yeah.
Okay, this one is going to be directed toward it's a question for everyone. And we'll start with, how about Bonnie, Neely? Does the board believe and work in the spirit with the mission statement of the water agency?
Yes. When the water board began with our 2 new members, Directors Automat and McLean, one of Kathy's first charges was that we work on the mission statement. She wanted to collect various statements from other districts and then work with changing the language a bit. And so, kind of under her supervision of that project, we had agreed on various changes, and I think she got most of the language she wanted.
Ms. Snelling?
The policies and procedures, the mission statement, I'm
Mission
sorry.
statement.
Yes, I do agree with it, but I think it should have more emphasis on water reliability, water quality, and keeping costs within a reasonable, that should have more emphasis.
Krizl?
I'm not sure what the question was regarding the mission statement?
Does the water board believe and work in the spirit with the mission statement of the water agency? Are you complying with the mission statement? Do you believe in it?
Of
The
our
spirit,
water district?
yes.
Yes, I believe we are. I believe we are. You know, the key factors are clean, reliable, and affordable water. And that's what the district strives for. And I think we've done a fabulous job with that. The base rate for water is currently, before the ALT retrofit goes into place, currently is $23 a month for water. If you look around regionally, that's surprisingly low. I know a lot of people in the area, in the region, that would be very anxious to have water rates at that level. So that's just one factor, but I believe that the district's done a very good job of providing the reliability, the affordability, and the quality of water. We exceed all federal and state water quality guidelines for God knows how long. We haven't had any boil orders. If you look at EID, PCWA, other agencies, they oftentimes have issues where they have to notify customers to boil their water. I don't know if the last time GDPUD has had to do that. So.
I have to say no, because I believe the water quality and the water issues are acceptable. My problem is the customer service portion is not acceptable because the board has forgotten who they actually work for. The board works for the public, and then the board takes what the public has, their input. And I don't believe that the board has been representing the public in their best capability. So.
Okay, the next is a two-parter for I guess to everyone. Mr. Krizl, why does it take two people to read the meter, and why is a quarter of the water bill for full retirement?
The first part I think is logistics, and I don't think the board needs to weigh into the logistics of what the general manager's purview is, which is to make sure that the employees do their job, do it efficiently, and get the work done. My understanding is the reason that there are two people out there is because we've got a lot of narrow roads, and there's somebody driving the vehicle, there's somebody that gets out, they park on the side of a very busy road, somebody runs out, checks a meter, gets back in, and goes. It's my understanding that it's a much more efficient system to do that. I'm not a logistics expert with regard to water meters. That's not the role of a board member. The second question, the second part of it, I'm not sure I understand.
Why is a quarter of the water bill for full retirement? Maybe is there something in place for people who are maybe retired? Retirement, do you mean for the pension, maybe? Is that what we're talking about? Why a quarter of the water bill goes to retirement? Is that more probably? Okay, so yeah, why does a quarter of the water bill people pay, go toward employees' retirement?
I don't think it does, unless you have figures, how can we refute it?
I don't know that we have any sort of a policy that says a quarter of the water bill goes toward employees' retirement. Employees' retirement needs to be funded, and some function of that needs to come from the water rates and from the water bills. I don't know where that came from, or where a quarter of it comes from, or how we don't have any. To my knowledge, we don't have anything that says 25% of your water bill, $22 or $23, goes to pay for Joe's retirement.
Okay. Ms. Capraun, why do you believe that there are two people required to read meters?
Well, there is a logistic issue, and in some locations it is a safety issue that you have to have one person stay in the car, and so that one person can go and read. There are other places like in Auburn Lake Trails where one person could actually get out and do it, but they're so used to having two. They have been doing two for years. And as far as the other portion, that was
about the
retirement, and I believe that in their budgets and their cost of service reports, they put in the amount, not the cost of service report, but in the auditor and in the budget, it does have, it's separated out. There's no percentage, but there's a dollar amount for each of the treated water and everything. It's in there. It's just not percentaged out for the costs. So there is a certain percentage, just like administration, customer service, the raw water, everything is broken down into an amount, and then they're just giving a percentage. And I'm pretty sure that percentage is, do they put down a percentage?
A quarter percent?
It's probably close to that, yeah. Probably close.
Ms. Neely?
I agree with the logistics question. If the employees had to park a car and then get out and read the meters, it'd probably take 3 or 4 times as long. And so I don't think that's really a legitimate concern. You either pay for 2 people or perhaps you have accidents. It's not much of a trade-off. With respect to the percentage of retirement offhand, I can't remember the exact figure as compared to the general operating fund. I'd get back to somebody, but I don't think it's 25%.
Ms. Snelling?
Well, I'm not familiar, not seen or worked with the meter readers. I'm not at liberty to really speak to that issue. But I do know that our general manager's salary plus the district paying his full benefit package plus his retirement plus all of the others, comes to about 10% alone. What every ratepayer pays, 10% of their bill goes to the general manager's income. And if you put on the 3 top the employees, thank you, that comes up to 18% of your water rate bill goes directly to 4 employees. So it's a concern about trying to understand how the general manager's kind of top heavy as far as on this water district of 3,000 customers is a little bit much.
I'd just like to make a clarification. Pre-2006, the employee cost is 39% for their retirement, and after, if you're hired after 2006, it's 14%, and that's how much it costs per salary based on the. So that's, and you have to average it out.
That percentage of their salary, not
No, that's the percentage of the salary, but 39% is really high considering, and.
but it is no longer.
Okay, this is directed to everyone. We'll start with Ms. Snelling. Yeah, try to mix it up a little. Do you think the planning for the Greenwood Lake Treatment Plant, now abandoned, and the Auburn Lake Trail Treatment Plant could have been done better? And what would you do differently?
Well, like I said, I think the board needs to be open and see how each project was done. When the Greenwood treatment plant was abandoned, no one knew when it happened. I think Hank said at the last meeting that somehow the public health department had said that we could do this issue or direct filtration with clarification, he chose not to go with that. He chose to go for a new treatment plant without talking about it in public session. I don't know if they did it in private session, but that needs to be done in the public so the public knows what is going on, so they know what kind of plans are being considered and how much it's going to cost us, the ratepayers and taxpayers. So if it's open, like this pre-qualification bid, it should be open, laid out for the public to hear.
Okay, Ms. Neely?
With respect to the Greenwood plant, it was abandoned after a lot of discussion because the state wanted to add a whole additional way of cleansing the water that had been used in the plant. It would have pushed rates total cost from about $12 million to $20 million. At that point in time, the board and the general manager went back to the state and said, our community can't handle $20,000. We do have, and we put together for one of the workshops, a complete timeline, just date and line item for the beginning of the Greenwood treatment plant, when we applied for grants, or when we got it, the date that it was actually abandoned, the date we made that decision, and then on down to probably April it's updated, and how different things were made and who approved, didn't approve, whatever. And it's fairly comprehensive, perhaps not completely, but it does cover a lot of the ground if people just have very general questions.
Thank you, Mr. President.
When I got on the board 8 years and probably 2 months ago, the decision had already been made to build the Greenwood Lake water treatment plant. So this has been going on for a long, long time. And I've been sitting in meetings for over 8 years and watching people come and go. And people say they've been going to meetings for 8 years or 10 years or 12 years or 20 years. And I haven't seen these faces sitting around at these meetings. But this decision was made a long time ago to start with Greenwood Lake. As Bonnie says, because of the state's requirements, the cost would have been exorbitant. And we moved over to an alternative, which was to build the ALT retrofit plant. We held public meetings, our regular public meetings, evening public meetings, special meetings, meetings ad infinitum to encourage people to come and tell us what they think. The board made a decision, and this is what we're moving forward with. So I believe it's been exhaustively discussed, reviewed, and exposed to the public for well over 8 years now. So if that's not enough, I don't know what it is.
Mr. Capraun.
Well, let's see, where should I start? In 1993, Chuck Garou told the state of California that he was going to change the plant into direct filtration. So they started the process of thinking about it way back then. Now we're, how many years later, and we're still nowhere. And then in 2000,
He was the general manager.
yeah, I know.
No.
Oh, okay. Well, Chuck was the general manager of GDPUD in 1993. And so then we're in 2003, the general manager already knew that the compliance order was going to come through, so he put a study on to have the ultraviolet light stuff done, whatever, the treatment of the water done for ALT, but that was going to be too much money, and they went to focus in on Greenwood instead. So they started with the idea of doing Greenwood, and they were going to terminate ALT. And in the meantime, in 2005, they upgraded Walton Lake, and it was supposed to be $250,000, but it went to $453,000 because the state had said there were some issues with the management and their poor handling of the situation. So then you go to this Greenwood plant, and in December 15th, 2008, there was a conference with the general manager, and the state wanted to know how it got to be $20 million, and they asked him to provide them with that information by January 9th of 2009, how it got to be $20 million, because they calculated the plant itself was $9 to $10 million. The change in the treatment of the waste products was going to be $1 to $2 million. So then they figured in for the time frame and everything about another $1 to $2 million. So they're about $13 million for, so $13 million for the plant. So you have, where did the other $20 million come from? So this information wasn't presented to the public. There was no abandonment of the Greenwood Lake treatment plant by the board of directors posted in any agenda. And so they couldn't continue with the Greenwood plant because they lost their loan, which was presented to them in a document in March of 2009. And then they decided in June of 2009 that they abandoned the Greenwood plant based on the financial documents, and they were going to go ahead with ALT.
Try and wrap it up.
Okay, this is for everyone in four-parters, so I'd like to break it down into two parts, okay? The first part of the question is who makes the agenda, and the fourth question is there a problem for a board member to get something on that agenda?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the beginning of the question.
Who makes the agenda, the board agenda, and is there a problem for a board member to get something on that agenda?
The board member has to request an item on that agenda at the meeting prior in order to get it on. And the agenda, I believe, is done by the attorney. I thought it was supposed to be done by the board clerk, who's the general manager. So I'm a little unclear on how it ends up happening, but a board, okay, so the general manager does the agenda. But in a policy, it's really wrong for a board member to have to only put something on the agenda at the previous meeting, because things happen between the first and the meeting and between meetings, and you need to add things onto the agenda. You should have an allowance of before the agenda is posted. If a board member would like to post something, they should be able to do it.
Ms. Snell?
Other boards I have gone to, which includes the Board of Supervisors, Fire Board, the State Water Resources Board, they submit something within a week or two before the meeting, and that gives staff enough time to be able to get whatever they need for the directors to contemplate the issue or what they might need to do for the issue. From what I gather here on the GPUD board is that they have to do it 30 days before, which seems very restrictive in trying to get anything done in a timely manner. So I have concerns about that.
Ms. Neely?
I think that was kind of our wish, that people would request things 30 days in advance. Part of the problem is if you request it too late, it's hard for staff to put together the backup materials, which they have to do. The board packets are mailed to the board of directors 5 working days before the board meeting, and so everything has to be put together. I think in practice it's turned out that if one of the directors has something they want to put on, as long as there's enough time to do backup or they want to prepare their own backup, I don't think we're that strict.
Mr. Krizl?
The board agenda is prepared as, I think most boards operate this way, by staff. That staff comes forward with the issues that need to be resolved by the board. These are issues that staff doesn't have the authority to resolve, and therefore they need to go to the board. Those issues come to the board. The board puts together, the staff puts together the agenda in conjunction with the board president. So as the agenda is being massaged and worked out, the general manager works with the board chair, board president, to come up with the agenda and lay that all out. About, I don't know when it was, 8 months ago, something like that, the board decided and voted to limit or to ask the board members if they wanted something on the agenda to ask for that the meeting before, because people were asking for things a week before the meeting was actually to be held. So that the staff could not accommodate that. And there were multiple items that were showing up that needed to show up on the agenda by individual board members. So we decided, unless it's an emergency item, let's come up with it before, a month before, at the end of each board meeting. We have an item where we ask every board member to, if you have something for next month's agenda, bring it up now and put it on there, and it'll be on there.
Okay, great. Everybody answered, yeah? Okay. The next question is for everyone, and Ms. Neely, can each board member work with the current general manager and move forward as a team, or do they need to?
Can each
Board member work with the current general manager
right,
as a team, or do they need to?
I'm not sure what the question is. We're each doing it individually and as a team?
Well,
I'm not sure what...
Can each board member work with the current general manager and move forward as a team, or do they need to do that? Should everyone be a separate individual looking out for themselves?
Oh, I don't think any of us are that separate. I have no problem working with the general manager, either with questions, suggestions, or criticism, if that may be the case. We would hope to come together at the board meeting to work as a team, but part of the problem in working with a team informally, which I think would be a good idea generally, is that with restrictions in the Brown Act, 3 directors cannot get together and make decisions separate from a board meeting. so that you work as an individual in the beginning, then you come together at a board meeting and hopefully you coalesce as a team. Depending on people's philosophies about management, finance, or whatever, we may or may not ever come together as a team. But we made that event.
Mr. Funk?
When you come together as the board, you'll put aside all your differences and you do work together and you should work together. The present general manager, provided he follows the policies set by the board, and there shouldn't be an issue.
Thank you. Mr. President?
I believe that I certainly have no problem working with the general manager. One thing that people need to understand is that board members have no individual authority over anybody, over any staff at GDPUD. The only authority we have is when we come together as a board. So that's a very important point. We individually work with staff to glean information, that sort of thing, figure things out, and I think it's very important to work as a team in order to deal with the issues that are in front of us.
It's the board's responsibility to challenge the manager to try and achieve what we, the public, representing the public, need from him. And it is his responsibility to come to the board and look at us to try and explain to us why he needs a new treatment plant, why he needs to bid for contractors, why he needs money to do various things. It's not the board's responsibility to just say, I don't need to hear about it, you go ahead and do what you want, Hank. I've heard that several times on the board in the past year, and I think it is wrong. That's not working as a
team. This came up twice, so I guess it's important. It's for everyone. Should there be a water district policy controlling expenditure for meals?
The district follows the state per diem and travel guidelines, and the states are usually fairly economical. I think they're a little lower than federal and lower than many cities, especially districts. So we follow the state guidelines.
Well, I have a problem with some of the expenses that were charged to the district for several meals that were, the receipt said that it was a board meeting and it gave the names of the people that were there. It was not open to the public. And it included the attorney and the general manager, but none of the public. So I have talked to several lawyers. I have a son that's a lawyer. I've talked to the state representative of the public, the Brown Act, and I've also talked to the county attorney. And they all say this is not legal. They should not be having a separate meeting at board's expense to, even though they say they are not talking about board business, but they are charging it to the district on the general manager's credit card. So I have a problem with that.
I wouldn't have a problem with the board developing a policy for expenditures. The way that it works now is if you're going to be traveling and you're going to have expenses, then the board approves a set amount for that expense in advance. And if you exceed that amount, then the board has to approve that subsequently after that. So it's all board approved. It's not something that's done sort of willy-nilly. It's all done through board action. Now, if the board wants to set up a policy in advance of that, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, this is for everyone. We actually mandated by the telephone. Oh, I'm sorry.
The board actually has no policy, well, they have no policy, but has no policies on obtaining a director's meal. Now, they do abide by, if you're going on a special event, a meeting or whatever, they bring it to the board and they go through and they pre-approve everything that you're going to extend. So that is a very good policy. The policy that they have no policy on about going out to eat after the board meeting is what the public is inquiring over there. Without a policy of how to handle it, you are actually in violation of California code because you're taking a gift of public funds. You are meeting for a non-meeting and you are charging the district as if it was a meeting. So you are kind of like in conflict with yourself because why are you having this meal, you're not having a meeting, but you're making the district pay for it? You receive a stipend, which is $400 a month, and that stipend is supposed to take care of the incidentals. Every time the board goes out, if they're just hopefully only 2 of them and not meeting in a quorum, they should pay for their own meal and it should not be charged to the district. In the event that it is charged to the district, each board member should reimburse the district for the cost of their meal. That is ethical and it is what you should do.
Is that in accordance with state law?
It is the state law. You're not allowed to do that at all. You are not supposed to charge to the district for a meal that is not related to district business. And in the event that you're charging it to the district, you obviously are doing business. And if you're doing business and you have a quorum and you're meeting with the legal counsel, you are in violation of the Brown Act.
Okay, this is a really good question. And all this is to keep that energy level up there. I'm going to read it, and it's got some names in here, but everybody can answer it to the best of their ability. Okay. If, as Bonnie Neely says, she can go into GDPUD offices and have complete and open access to files for hours on end, why did board member Automat have to schedule appointments to look at files? Ms. Automat was elected to represent the public. So Ms. Snelling would like to comment on that?
Yes, I would. I have been totally flabbergasted by this because having been a reporter, I know about the Freedom of Information Act, and it is mainly to get information to understand why the directors contemplated the information and made their decision. And it's why in the world does a director have to get a Freedom of Information Act to find out why they're voting on something? It makes no sense to me. I have not been able to find a single attorney who says that that is a legal action. And the only one is the GDPUD Bill Wright, the attorney that has said that that is perfectly okay for the board to do that. I can't find another attorney who agrees with that.
Yeah, well, first of all, the Freedom of Information Act applies only to federal agencies. The California Public Records Act applies to Georgetown IPUD, local agencies, and state agencies. So you're right. You're missing that. The issue has been the amount of requests. So if somebody comes in and starts asking for, I want to know the last 10 years of anything associated with this activity, I'm sorry, that's going to take some time. You're not going to be able to walk in the door and have everybody drop what they're doing. These people are responsible for, again, providing clean, reliable, and affordable water to the community. And they're not going to drop everything that they're doing to sit down and pull out 10 years worth of files and sit there with somebody and show them what they want to see. That's been the issue. It's the volume of requests, not the request itself, but the volume of requests. But it is the California Public Records Act, not the Freedom of Information.
Ms. Neely?
I think you also, in addition to the volume of requests, I think under public records you have to have a specific something, a document, a report, or whatever. I know several community members have requested things, but they've requested so broadly that they have been refused and they've gotten pretty upset about it. You can't ask for like a conversation about or what you put together. You have to ask for a document management by name, something that's identifiable. And unfortunately, our records are put together in a way that's not the most organized or retrieval, because we had more staff, each with their own activities. Steve Gow had some, Becky had some, the main office had some. And there hasn't been the staff available to integrate those files and pull them together in a meaningful way so that you could pull out something and know there's nothing personal or private in it. So we do have a problem with that yet. We're trying to get together on it, and Steve Miller from ALC has been assisting with trying to work out something that meets the act, but also allows the board to have some leeway in responding.
I don't feel that a board member needs to do a public request. I can't say it. Anyway, they can't request information. They should be able to just make an appointment with the general manager, and he should go over everything that they need to know and that they want to review. A board member takes about 2 years if they have no previous knowledge of what the little intricate stuff at the district is before they get up to speed. If you take the time and you put it into that director and you give them knowledge, you are benefiting the whole district by giving them knowledge. And I believe Director Automat's 10 years were for ALT. She wanted to know what the history of the plant was, and that's what the 10 years was over. How can she vote on something she doesn't understand? As a board member, you all come from just different aspects. I have the ability that I already know about the district, but people who don't, they need to be notified and brought up to speed on all these things that are going on in the district. And I really feel that a director needs the ability to have open access. A person in the public can request anything they want, as much as they want, and that's the law. You have to provide it to them. A director shouldn't have to go through hoops and whatever just to be able to have information about what they have to vote on.
I was in on time there. Are we good for more questions?
Yeah, we're ready.
Okay, because they're, it's been checking. So this is some for everyone. Will we actually mandated by the California Department of Health, CDPUD, to build a new ALT treatment plant, or would they have allowed a lesser expensive alternative, such as an alternate filtration system? Neely?
I think after all these reports, all of everything, the amount of time that's gone by, it got to the point.
It got to the point where the system that management chose was probably the only alternative that could come in within budget and meet state requirements. The requirement from the state is that the chemicals, whatever the substances are in the water, be removed to a certain tiniest micron of something or other. And each year they add more toxic things that shouldn't be in the water. So the filtration system gets more and more sophisticated and more time consuming, more expensive. And in fact, after the ALT thing gets built, we have nothing that would say within another 2 or 3 years they don't come down and say, okay, we want to reduce down to, some more invisible nano levels or whatever. So to a certain extent, I think GPUD and the other small districts are stuck with expensive systems because the state requires more and more purity in water.
We already have pure water. The only reason we're doing the filtration system is for the certain bacteria, and I can't even pronounce them, and I'll just get tongue-tied. But you have to filter them out. And the only thing we do is we need to treat it with chlorine, because as it travels through the ditch, it gets mucky, and the clarity has an issue, and it needs to be chlorinated for sterilization, and then it needs a certain amount of contact time. The ALT plant could have been done with the cheaper option. It was the management's decision to go with a more costly option. There are things in the treatment plant that need to be upgraded, but this plant could have been upgraded and at a lesser cost without having that $5 million loan for the district. I There was a letter from the state of California from 2010 that specifically stated they would accept direct filtration at the cheapest option at $3 million with the little added, a few added in things, and it would have been fine. This water has nothing in it that is contaminants other than just the debris it picks up along the way and needs to be chlorinated. We have pure water from the source. We don't have any lead levels, any of the other, I didn't even say, any of the other crap, but we have good water.
You know, we've had a lot of discussion on this, and it goes back to an earlier question about, you know, have we discussed this enough and made the public aware of this enough? And I believe we have, with all the different public meetings that we've had in the evenings at the high school and whatnot. Originally, the GDPUD had to retrofit the Walton Lake water treatment plant, and GDPUD should get some credit for getting that done without having to rebuild the entire plant. And they got that done, and they got it through the state, and it saved the ratepayers a lot of money. When we went through to get ALT going, the state told GDPUD, you're not going to be able to do that. So basically what we're doing now is we need to use a different process in conjunction with the fact that this is a 40-year-old plant. The board has made a decision to invest in the infrastructure, and there's people in here that can talk about the age of water treatment plants and when it's time to rebuild them and whatnot. It's a 40-year-old plant. It's time to rebuild that infrastructure. The state has told us we need to do it. We need to do it. We've made a decision to do it, and we need to move on.
Okay.
Yes, today I was rereading the California Public Health letter that came to GPUD, trying to refresh my memory of exactly what it had asked GPUD to do. And they gave them 4 options. And one of the options was direct filtration with clarification and a Foley where it makes, yeah, where it makes the particles bigger and so they'll fall and it's easier to strain out clear water. But it also said that, it also said that because GPUD has open ditches, it also is subjective to a bacteria being like, I was trying to find the specific word. Yeah, crypto something or other. Thank you, cryptosporidium. And so what they have to do is use the folio where it makes it cleaner. Thank you. My degree is not in water treatment. So they could have done that with the direct filtration and the foliation method, or that the public health said that they could go for a new kind of treatment plant and that it would need to meet these qualifications. That was option number 3, and option number 4 is the membrane method. So they, for some reason, the GPUD, which I have yet to been able to find the agenda item that talks about this, why they went with the new treatment plant that had to go to ALT, which is more expensive, and it was not required by the California Department of Public Health in that letter. They said that you could have the option, but you didn't need to. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, this is,
Can I?
I'm sorry, yes, of course.
Can I just say, this is why we have a general manager that's experienced in this, is that the board, candidates for the board, don't understand the technicalities of this. We hire people to do this, and we hire people that have the skills and the abilities to make these decisions. The board has to provide oversight, but the board is not here to decide whether membrane filtration or direct filtration is the right thing. And for the life of me, I don't want the board to make those decisions. I'm not qualified. none of us here are qualified to do that. Thank God we have somebody that's in place that can make those decisions.
Well, I believe that if you just read the document, you would see what the state actually stated, that we didn't need to rebuild the plant. I know we need upgrades. My issue is the way that everything is presented to the public. They did not know we did not need the upgrade, the filtration system we're going with. They were told at the public meeting the state was requiring us to do exactly what we were doing, but that wasn't what the state had put in their letters and their documentation to the district. And another issue is the life of the plant. You have a 40-year plant. We're taking out a 40-year loan. So at the end of this loan, we pay it off, and what are we going to have to do? We're going to have to build another plant. That is poor planning to me, and I don't feel that this whole project has been represented in the best interest of the district.
It was nature of construction, the things die at a certain time.
Well, there's more that you could have done, because in actuality, Greenwood should be readdressed, even though now somebody might not want to hear it, but it is in a better location. It can provide a better opportunity for this district in the long run. You don't have to do a membrane filtration. Membrane filtration is the plant that they were going to put in. It is unneeded at this district. You only need simple filtration because the water is perfect. It is good water. It doesn't have any crap in it. It's pristine. It's good water. And I just think that is where our focus should be, not on this.
Okay.
Yes, I just wanted to say that it wouldn't be the board that would be making the decision about which treatment. Actually, that letter from the California Public Health was questioning why the general manager was going for a more expensive method rather than the options. They said you can do this if you want, but it's not necessary. And that should have been presented and open to the public. And that's where the board has to do its job of challenging the general manager.
Okay, this next one's for everyone. It's important that you bring knowledge of Northern California water rights to the table. Why would that be important to us as GDPUD customers?
Well, we've talked about that already tonight a little bit. I think it's very important. I think we need to be aware of the politics at the state level and what the water players in the state are doing. We have very, very, very little say in what goes on. We have very senior water rights that we have. For us to get additional water rights is going to be a huge challenge to get those water rights and take them away from somebody else and pull them away from Central Valley water users, regional water users, etc. We need to be aware of that. We're in pretty good shape with GDPUD with regard to water supply. It's one of the reasons that when I talked earlier about the El Dorado County Water and Power Authority, that we decided to pull away from that. The reason we were into that in the first place and looking to get additional water rights was because the general plan passed back in 2005, I believe it was, showed a lot of increased demand for water on the Georgetown Divide. So we wanted to be a part of the process that would possibly get us additional water rights in case that demand actually came to fruition. That demand has not surfaced on the Divide. The Divide, as Bonnie McLean always says, is a very slow growth community. And I think she's right. We're not going to need a lot of additional water. We're in good shape the way we are, but we need to be aware and make sure that we maintain the water rights that we have, make sure that we show that we're using that water appropriately for beneficial uses, which is the way the state requests us to, and we need to go from there.
Yes. California law is really a strange law. Their water rights is determined about making the water work for them.
It's not riparian rights where the water goes by you and you have a responsibility for the guy downstream. It was established along riparian. What did I say?
Riparian.
Oh, sorry. Riparian rights. But here in California, we had, and I'm going to bad now, the Republicans. Tom McClintock introduced H.R. 1837, which was calling for the federal government, the Secretary of Interior, to have all water contracts, which would make us obligated to the Delta. And he wanted all 40% of the water sent down to Kern County. I asked the board what they were doing about it, and the answer I got was, the Senate won't let it pass. We don't need to worry about it. That, to me, is not taking responsibility to protect your water rights.
And what happened?
The state
Senate didn't let it pass.
Yes, but I also talked to McClintock, and he said no one from the water district talked to him and said that there was a problem with fighting for Kern County instead of his own district.
He lied.
Well, that's what
I
he told
talked to
me.
him personally.
Okay, what did he say?
Said, that's why.
Yeah, okay. Well, now we got the Delta, and they're going back at our water rights again. And we need to fight for them. And if you want to talk about EDWAPA was, GPUD has 5,000 cubic acres, mine too much here, cubic feet per second. And we gave that away. Instead of fighting for it, we got the $90,000. $900,000.
Now, we're gonna carry this on for about another 15 minutes, and then we wanted to dedicate an hour and a half to this forum. There will be another opportunity for people to ask more questions, and if the questions that haven't got answered here, we can get them there. But I want to start one.
The 5,000 feet that Pat talked about is giving away were from Folsom, so we would have had to build facilities to pump them up from the river below ALP or pump backwards from Folsom. It was an untenable gift.
We didn't give anything away. It's nothing that we ever had to begin with. We went into that looking for additional water rights. We decided after years of working with that process that was not going to be the process that worked for us to get those additional water rights. We didn't give anything up. Our water rights are exactly the same now as they were before we ever signed on with the El Dorado Water Power Authority.
Did you want to add anything to that?
Briefly, I don't know if all of you know that water districts, including GPUD, are supervised mostly by the state public health department. And they pass on requirements that come from the federal government. So you may have requirements from the EPA or from wherever it comes to the state reinterprets, passes them on to us. In terms of protecting water rights, I'm not sure each board member needs to know exactly what they are. We need to know that management, first of all, follows all of the state requirements and requests for reports or whatever we need to do to convince the state that we are properly using water. We have hired attorneys who specialize in water rights and then some consultants who also specialize in that to help us with various reports, and particularly in 2010 when we had to submit the application for licensing rights. And so there's a very careful watching of all of this. Nothing happens very fast. It's not on an individual level. And now that Mountain Counties is working for all of us, I think that way it keeps all of us informed. It's very difficult to look at the Delta stuff and have any idea of what you're reading. At least I have no idea what I'm reading. Okay. First of all, the California Department of Public Health is only for the safety and quality of the water. State Water Resources Board is the one who determines who gets what water where. And as far as the 5,000 acre feet per second. That was supposed to be out of the Upper American River project, and that was up north by Gurley Creek. But we couldn't tap into it. EDWAPA would not agree to that. They wanted us to collect it out of Folsom, which was unattainable. And the state, the El Dorado County water plan specifically talks about that 5,000 acre feet that we did not claim.
Okay, so water flows downhill, we all got that, right? So as the water starts its dumpy and we have to maintain a level at Pilot Creek. Well, they've already been monitoring the water that's in the American River, and we have to maintain how much water we set through Pilot Creek to get down to the American River. And in the event that the delta changes anything, that's changing the amount of water that's coming through, and we would have to add more water in to maintain the level along the portion. So, wherever you get rid of water along the way, it affects us. And therefore, we have to watch the water and what they're doing along the way in water. And that's a simple way to put it for everyone to understand about our rights are affected by everyone else's actions along the way. Is that simple enough?
No, that was totally
I
unclear.
didn't understand that at all.
Did you understand as the water goes through? Okay, as the water
He
comes
said
through.
they take it, who's they?
Whoever takes it from the state, if the delta ends up going lower and we have to maintain a level and we have to add more water into it?
No, it's not.
May I say something? Okay. California law, Lutz versus Hickam, was a farmer, a rancher up on the hill who had kept the water for his cattle. And the farmer down in the valley was not getting any water. The state Supreme Court ruled that we have a responsibility for those downstream. And in fact, as of this day, the Department of Water Resources has put in monitors in all three forks of the American River to make sure that we maintain the water level. So if we're in a drought, guess who has to make up the difference? Our water district, El Dorado County and GDPUD.
Well, I guess my overwhelming statement would be, thank God we're actually talking about water. Our board agendas have been filled with nonsensical items related to our general manager's resume 25 years ago and whether or not he worked at a certain place, even though the full board has had access to his personnel file, his resume, and everything. We've been focusing on everything but water for the last year and a half or 2 years. Thank God we're talking about water. These are very important issues. One of the great pluses that we've mentioned a couple of times tonight is the Mountain Counties Water Resources Association. I sit on the board of that group, and it's rare that an agency as small as GDPUD, and that needs to be pointed out tonight, that we're a very small organization. We're not like EID or PCWA. We're not going to have great big policy books and all sorts of grandiose things going on. But it's very rare that an organization as small as ours sits on an organization like that, has a board member that sits on their board and participates in that. That group has become very influential as of late and participates in all the issues that Pat's bringing up with the Delta and all the things that the governor and all of his minions down in Sacramento are trying to do. Bottom line, hands down, they want all of our water. And they are dead set on working to take it away from us. But our water rights are very senior to a lot of other water rights. And what I mentioned before is that our water that we have now is suitable for our community. It's suitable for the growth level that we have, and we're okay for now. We can pursue other water rights. It's going to be very expensive. The reason we pulled out of it, WAPA, and we didn't give anything up, because we went in there with nothing. We didn't give anything up. But the reason we pulled out was it was going to cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, to chase down some potential benefit that may or may not have occurred. That's why we pulled out. So don't say that we gave something up. We didn't give anything up. We walked in there with what we had. We walked out of there with what we have, plus $90,000 a year for the next 50 years.
Okay. I think we're out, our time limit is up. And I want to thank the board member, I mean the candidates here for coming and speaking.